that all works today. We're also going to get into a nested if. There could be a situation where, yes, we run a test, and yes, we have a true answer, but there may be another option where we need to run another test because there could be a possibility of a second true answer, and then of course we'll have a false answer after that. So we'll actually have two if statements, or if functions, in one statement. One of the other things that we can do is we can use what we call the AND function. And the AND function just checks whether all arguments are true. So that means that if you say it's greater than this and it's less than this, it has to equal both of those. And if it doesn't, then it returns the word false. If it does, then it will return the true. A lot of times, we don't necessarily want the word true or false as the answer, but we need a function that can really look to see if in fact it is true or false. Your false, find all your trues, copy. Many years, way back in the 2003 version and earlier, you might have had to use things such as is error. You notice I have an F4 and I have the name range here because one of the things that we're going to find is, and if you're familiar with building functions and dragging them down and copying the formula down, let's say we built this formula and now I want to copy it down. Well, I originally started with this value here that I'm using in the formula, but when I move down to here, everything should move down one row. It uses what we call relative referencing, and you'll see that in just a minute, but I just want to give you kind of heads up of why I'm going to be naming or using the F4 function key. What happens is it's now going to be looking at taskers totals here in this formula, but these are going to shift down to here and down to here, and we need to stop that. So some of you figured out you could do it this way. If you don't really understand this, you just put the 1850 in all the formulas. Not a good idea. You should not be putting these values in your formula. You should be referencing the cell location and locking it down, making it absolute, and that's exactly what these two options do, is they lock the cell down so that it never moves when you copy the formula to the right or down or whatever direction you're going to go in. I want to show you how to do this, and the F4 will do while we're building the formula, but I want to talk about naming this cell right here, and I want to use it in the formula that we're about to build. So the way it works is you click on the cell or the range of cells, in this case it's just one, and then what we need to do is come up to the Formulas tab. Now under the Formulas tab, notice the Define Names group. And if you need more help or you'd like to, review more information on this, just check out the video library. We have a lot more on this if you need to name ranges or a range of cells. You would go to the define name, and under the define name, it will open up this box. This is where you can name this location, because right now this location is named J2 because that's its location in the spreadsheet, but you can change it and make it a unique name for navigation purposes or for formulas. This is really a great option for you. Now what it did is it looked above and it said, oh, you know what, I see a label up here. Why don't I go ahead and just use that as the name? And I'm fine with that. But one thing I want you to note here is commission rate is 2 words. But notice when it placed it in here in the name box, it put an underscore that combines the 2 words together. So in other words, when you name this, and you can name it whatever you want, well, pretty much whatever you want, you can't have spaces. So either put the 2 words together or an underscore to separate the 2 words, or at least looking like it's separated. Notice here that it's looking at the sheet called Basic If. That's the sheet tab down at the bottom. And it's the J2 cell, but it's got those weird little currency symbols right in front of the J and the 2, locking down both the column and row. So if I use this in a formula and I drag down thousands of rows, it does not matter. It will always reference J2. And the reason why we want to do it this way versus putting 20% in all the formulas is if somebody makes a change here, we want to make sure it reflects correctly in the formula. Always use the cell address, not the value that's in there when you're building formulas. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and build the if that will look and test to see if this is true or false, any of these numbers against the sales goal. All you got to do is come up to the FX button, and this will open up the Insert Function dialog box. Great option here. Now, I've had several of these open just recently, so they're going to be in my most recent. If you don't have it, there's a couple ways you can navigate. If you know the function, somebody says, yeah, just go out and get the if error. All you got to do is just type it in here, and it will find it for you. If not, you can go under the all, and you can find them alphabetically listed. Let's click on the if and let's just see what it says. So here is what the function's purpose is. It checks whether a condition is met, so that's the test that we're going to do, and then it returns one value if true and another value if false. Boy, that sounds like it's going to work really well for us. If you need additional help, because this is the first time you built it, and you don't want to ask somebody, you're like, I hate to keep asking for help for this, but I'd really like to kind of know how to do this, you can try the help on this function. This is really a nice one. Microsoft opens up a nice page with some links, a description, examples, all kinds of options for you. So definitely take advantage of that. All right, so I'm going to click on OK. And here are the arguments, or you may want to refer to them as steps, but they are function arguments. And there are 3 that are required here for this function to work completely. You'll see up here in the formula bar just above my functions argument dialog box, we already have the equals, the if, and an open and close parenthesis. So building it in the box is a little bit easier because you can avoid a couple different things, and I'll talk about those as well. So the logical test is any value or expression that can be evaluated to a true or false. This is the test. I'm going to move this down just a little bit here. What are we looking for? I'm looking to find out if this value here, Wilson's total, is greater than or equal to this. Now here's where I've got to make a move, because if I don't, we're going to have a serious situation here. If I just continue right now and I drag this formula down when I'm done with it, it's going to keep shifting down one cell at a time. But with these marching ants going on, you can hit the F4 function key. That's the key way up at the top of the keyboard, and it will put these goofy little currency symbols right in front of the I and right in front of the 2, which locks down both the column and row. It doesn't matter where I drag this formula, I2 will appear in every single function that I build. What happens if it's true? Well, if it's true, let's take Wilson's total and let's apply, so we'll multiply 20%. Now, do you see what happened here is, because I found it, I could click on it and it put the name in there. So it is an absolute reference value. But let's say I couldn't find it. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the spreadsheet. I don't even remember what we've named it. That's fine. You don't even need to remember. All you need to do is go right back up to the formulas, and you notice that a lot of this seems to be grayed out, but the use in formulas is not. So when you click on the drop down, you can find the commission rate right here. Click on it and it'll put it in. Also, when you're building in this box, you should start seeing results. Look at this. It already knows it's true, and this is going to be the answer before you even leave the box. Now, what happens if it's false? Well, we could do text, we could do numbers, you could do a formula, whatever it is that you would like to do. If you do text, so you want to say better luck next time or whatever you might want to say, you need to put quotes. Now, you're going to find that I'm going to tell you this, but then I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit later in the webinar here. You do not need to put the quotes in here if you type in text, because if you type in text while you're in the box, it will automatically put quotes there. And that's almost entirely true. You're going to find a little bit later that we in fact will have to, but I'll explain the situation. But for the most part, type in text that you want. When you move off from it, it should put the quotes there for you automatically. I'm just going to put 0 in. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to copy down the formula. Now, one of the things you want to do, definitely always, is check your last answer. I like to double click on the last answer. I like to really open up that function, and I like to see it more visually on my screen, because this is what needs to happen. I'm in row 7, so I better be using David's totals right here, which I am. You can see it right here. And I do not want to move off from these two cells. So I want to include the 1850 and the 20% in my function. And look at that. It certainly is working correctly. Escape key in the upper left of your keyboard is a great way to get out of this, because you are technically in edit mode and you could, in fact, mess up the function or formula that you're using. So there's a basic one, just kind of a single if. Let's take a look at another possibility here. This time, why don't we look at the possibility of, yes, we do have the 1850 or greater, and we'll give you 20, but if you have 15 or greater, we'll give you 10. Well, it looks like there's a possibility of a couple of true answers here, as well as a false, and you're not going to get anything if you're below the 1500. What we're going to need to do is build the if function. So I'm going to go ahead and build the if function. And this one's probably going to be a little bit tougher because I really can't take advantage of that dialog box that we had earlier. This was kind of one you're going to have to build more manually. But let me show you how you can get help along the way. This is what it's saying. Look down here, because these are the arguments, and it tells you right where you are. You're at the logical test location. Like that's the test that's either going to be evaluated as true or false. So what do we need to do? We needed to do Wilson's total is greater than or equal to this. We got to do something here, right? If I don't lock that cell down, as soon as I drag down, it's going to start shifting down and moving each row, one row lower at a time. So this is where I'm going to hit the F4 function key. I'm going to lock it down. Basically, I'm saying, is this greater than or equal to this? That's the test. Comma separates the value. Now notice I'm in the value of true. So if it's true, I want to take Wilson's total and I want to multiply it by 20%. Again, I need to lock down that cell using the F4 function key so that it's not going to move. A comma, and now it wants the false. But you know what? I'm not ready for the false because I still have another test and a possible true. That means you just build another if function in there. You don't need the equals again because look, you've got the equals right here. And by the way, if you want to know what the equals is, that's really telling Excel that you're building a function, not throwing a bunch of words and numbers up there. You only need the equals once, and you already have it here. So we don't need equals, but we do need if, and we do need an open parenthesis. So now we're building it, and we're on the logical test again. And you can see it's covering up the actual information I want, so I'm going to have to manually kind of type it in here. So the logical test is I want to find out if this is greater than or equal to, well, what's in I3. So I'm going to have to type in manually I3. I do want to lock down I3 with the F4 function key. Okay, so that's the test. Is it greater than or equal to 1500? That's what it is. I know it's hidden, but that's what the number is. I'll hit a comma here, and now notice I'm in the value of true. So if it's true, you know what I want to do? I want to take this total, and I want to multiply it by, I guess, J3. I'll have to type that one in manually as well. So J3, again, I want to lock that down, and then, comma, value if false. So we've got a couple of tests, we've got a couple of trues, And then, of course, we would have a false. And I'll just throw a 0 in there. Now, what I want you to notice is that you have an open parenthesis black here. You have an open parenthesis red here. You need to close those parentheses. So the first time that I close it, you notice it's the red, and it's actually closing this portion of the function here. If I hit it again, it's going to give me a black one, and that closes the beginning one right after the first if. So let's see what happens when we do this. Okay, so you see everybody's getting a commission except for David here, because you can see that he is below the 1500, and that's why it's not working. Okay, so that's why he's not getting that. So you can see everybody else, because on the first one, you saw that we had a couple of people, Tasker and Morgan, did not get this when we had this goal, but it looks like they're going to get the 10% because they meet that 1500 or greater. That's a nested. And you can keep going with this. I don't recommend going much beyond 2, maybe 3 ifs, because I think it gets very lengthy and it's time consuming. I would go with a VLOOKUP, have a table, and have it look down the table personally. That's what I would do. All right, so let's get into the and see how that looks. So and is that one that you really need to work with both, right? So it checks whether all arguments are true, and then returns the word true if all arguments are true, or otherwise it'll return the word false. And you can do up to 255 conditions. And again, that's really extreme. I would try to see if there was another function or possibility for you than to do something that extreme. All right, so I want to do this with a couple of things, because a lot of times, we'll just use text or we'll use numbers, and then people go, well, can you use text or can you use numbers or can you use both, or what can you do? So I want to do it with both here, and I want to start out with, looking at the numbers, and then I want to just look at text and show you how that works as well. Remember, it has to meet both conditions. So the first one, we're going to find the and function. So I happen to have it here, but you could type it in. So again, it's going to check whether all arguments are true. And let's see what we want to do here. So the first one that we want to do is we want to check to see if we're going to do numbers here. And we're looking at basically this range of numbers right here. So I have to tell it what cell to look at, right? So it has to look at a cell. So let's say it's going to look at this cell. And I'm wondering if it's greater than or equals to 400. It's saying that it's not. It's saying, no, we're going to give you a false, because obviously it's less than 400. But we also have another test that it has to do as well. So remember, this is an and. It has to be both conditions. We're wondering if H3 is less than or equal to 650. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to get a false. We're going to go ahead and copy this down. You can see, like, for instance, 649 is in between 400 and 650, so that looks good. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an if in here in just a minute as well. Let's try it with text now just to see how that works. Remember, it's an and statement, both things. I want to find compact and notebooks. It's got to be both, notebook and compact. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that and statement again. First one we'll do is we'll test whether B3 equals. Now I'm going to type this in, and I'm going to show you what's going to happen. I didn't put any quotes around the text, and I told you you didn't have to put quotes around text. Well, I was a little bit wrong here. Okay, see this right here? This is not good. So if you see this, that means that obviously whatever you're trying to do is not working, and you better go right back there and figure it out. If it's just the name compact, it would have been fine. But because we're comparing it to C against that cell with the B3 in there and the equals, we need to put the quotes around the compact. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, it seems to like that better. And it even says that's true, which in fact it is. But the other condition that has to be met here is that we want to know if C3 equals notebook. And you can see I'm wrapping the quotes around that so that I won't get that error. And we can continue on. Look, you can continue on to 255 conditions. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to go ahead and copy this down, and we can see, in fact, this is not true because it's a desktop. It says compact. It met that, but it did not meet the notebook in the column C, so obviously it's not a true statement. And just before I add the if in here and change the results so the answers are different or more meaningful or whatever you want to do here, I just want to show you a couple of things you could do. This data, maybe what you're interested in doing is just looking for all the trues. Okay, sure. So by finding it with the formula, which you could do, you could go right up to your data tab and you could throw on the filter. So you can see we got your filter here. We could filter and find just all the trues. And then what you can do is you can copy, and I'm just going to grab probably this, I'll grab this range here. And what I want you to see is when I copy it, what it looks like. It looks like a mess. Look at it. It's like, what the heck's going on here? I even have some hidden columns here. It looks like you can see the grouping option here where I can expand or collapse it. If I was to copy this and paste it, this is exactly what you'd get. What you see is what you get. But it wouldn't be A, B, C, H. It would be A, B, C, D. So you wouldn't know that you were actually missing anything because this is all I'm going to send you. So this is nice. When you filter in Excel, you get visible cells only when you copy it. So when you paste it, you're going to only get these cells, these rows, these columns. So it's really a nice feature and something you might want to consider. Just, maybe the true false is fine just to find what you're looking for and then return it. Maybe you don't even return that column. You don't even care about the true or false word, but you care about the records that it found. All right, so I wanted to make some changes here because I don't really want the word false in there. I'm thinking maybe the word high-low. Okay, I'll just do something like that. So I'm going to come back up here, and it's really easy. And what I recommend is, and this is how I do it, is I build one function at a time. I get it to work, and then I add the second one in. Because if you build it all as one, unless you really know what you're doing, what happens if you have a problem? What function's the cause of the problem? I don't know. This way you know that you've at least built this correctly. Now all we got to do is just throw an if in here. So let's go ahead and do that. You click on the equals right there just after it. I throw an if in here with an open parenthesis because I need an open and close. And look how easy this is. It's basically like the logical test, the test. This is the test. It either is true or false. All we need to do is a comma. I need a true statement, a comma. I need a false statement. Let me just slide over here. I'm just going to hit that right there. What is the true? Well, let's say it's going to be the word high. Well, I'm going to need to put that in quotes because I am definitely outside of the box here. Comma. Now what's my false is will be low. Again, quote. Remember I have an open black parenthesis. I need to close it. I'm going to hit enter. And let's just copy those down. So maybe I would rather have something else as a return value than true or false. Most of the time you do, unless you just need to filter it and do whatever you need to do with it. Let's try something with this one right here. We'll throw in an if. And let's see, what are we going to do with this one here? Because that's the test. So the true, let's do something like, we could have it return, just to show you, we could have it return this cell value right here. Sure, we could do that if you want. And then if not, I'll just hit a comma. And I could even, maybe I don't want it to show anything. So a couple of quotes with no space, that's a blank. So let's see what that does. Because it met the compact notebook, it did put their 379 there. But you can see all of these are blank because they did not meet the and of both compact and notebook. All right, so that's your and. Got to meet both of those conditions or multiple ones. I don't know. You could have more than two. That's for sure. So let's look at this or statement here. So the or is, it could be this or it could be this. It could be compact or del. We really don't care. Either one. As long as one of them is met, we get a true. So we're going to go ahead and use the or. I'm going to find the or up here. Let's see. Here's the or. And in the or, let's see what we want here. So in our or, we're going to find out if this cell here equals 379, which it looks like it does. Or we're going to find out if this cell equals 649. Let's throw an equals in there. That'll help. There we go. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. So you can see the true. We'll jump that down. And then for text, let's see if we can find either one of these. So all we got to do is come right back up here again. We'll get our OR. And the first one will be, we'll just want to find out if, in fact, B3 equals, so it'll say compact. Now, again, I do have to put quotes around this because it is not just the word. So we'll have to put that in there. And the second one is we want to find out if B3 could also possibly equal del. And we'll close that out. There we go. And let's see what that looks like. So we should have some trues in there. Some false, of course, because that's Hitachi. There's the del. Del came out true. That's perfect. Yeah. And we could also come in here and do an if and decide on what we would like for the true and what we would like for the false. So maybe you want something like match, does not match, or return one of the values that are in there. You could do that as well. So that's what we're looking at there. Now I want to get into that last one, which again wasn't on the description, but I think you really like this one if you do run into errors occasionally here and there. And I do want to talk a little bit about the order of operations. So we're going to talk just a little bit about that. I want you to look at this. This doesn't look right here. I don't like that answer at all. And you can see we're dividing by 0, and that causes problems here. So let's take a look at this function or formula or whatever we built here. I'm not sure yet until I click on it to see what it is. Looks like you can see that we took these sales of $1,000, we subtracted it from C6, and we divided it by C5 to find out. So we had 700, we divided by 1,000, we came up with 70%. If you're not quite sure about the order of operations, I don't even think you think these parentheses mean anything? Let's just find out. So if you're not sure, now for those of you that know the order of the operations, you're like cringing going, oh, don't do it. But I'm going to do it. And we're going to, let me undo that. And we're going to see what happens. I would suggest that if you came up with an answer like this, you do not turn this in. Now, everybody would like to have a 99,970% profit, but it's probably not going to happen. So what happened here is, the fact is that there is an order of operations. When you use mixed operators in this, in which we're doing, we're using subtraction, we're using division. Well, guess what? Division comes before subtraction, unless you throw parentheses around something. So think about logically how you're going to build it. If you're not really sure of the order of operations, throw some parentheses around that, and boy, it makes a huge difference. Let me just undo that. That's probably quicker. What I need to do to get this to figure out and get this to work the way I want it is I need that if error. And it's, like I say, real easy. And it became available in 2007 Excel. Like I was saying earlier, in the 2003, we used to have to build the is error and the if, and it was just an incredibly long function that was very easy to, have an error, or at least not know how to complete it. This one I think you're going to find very easy. All I got to do is I usually just run the function or the formula. In this case, it's just a regular old formula. And then I come right in here after the equals and I type in if error. This is where it gets a little tricky when you already have the parentheses in here, because if error needs a open parenthesis, and at the end of the arguments, it needs a closing parenthesis. But you're probably thinking there's already an open parenthesis. Yes, there is, but it doesn't belong to the if error. It belongs to the subtraction piece, and we do not want to remove that from it because we've got to make sure that the division is not done first. So I need to throw in a open parenthesis. So it does get a little confusing, but look at the red. See the red? That's the inner parentheses, and inner parentheses are calculated first, and then it keeps moving to the outer parentheses. What we're saying here, now look at this, is really easy. So the if error says, you know what? I want to know the value. And if the value is good, I'll display it. But if it errors out, what would you like to see instead of an NA, or this case divide by 0? So all you need to do is click right at the end, put a comma in here because you need to separate the values from the value if, and put in whatever you want. If you want 0, close that parenthesis. Let's just copy that over and see if it works. Perfect. If you wanted to put text in there, you could just come right up here and you could put text in here as well. So this is a really great option for you. And if you really want some help with that, let me just grab it here. I know we're running just a couple minutes over, so I'm going to be as quick as I can here. I appreciate you hanging in there for a couple extra minutes. If help with this function, let me just show you this real quickly here. And I'll see if I can get to some of the questions. The if error is looking at somewhere here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. So it's looking like the NAs, the values, the reference, the divide by zero, number, name, null. So any of those, if you get any of those, you can decide on what you want. And all you got to do is just throw the if error in there, give me an open parenthesis, a comma at the end, and whatever you would like at the as the value, whether it's text, make sure it's in quotes, if it's text, or a number or something along those lines. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Microsoft Excel Logical Functions. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Microsoft Excel Logical Functions. So let's get into the topics and see what we're going to cover today. We're going to start out with the if function, and some of you probably have built the if function, but we're going to nest it with other functions as well today. So we're going to have some exciting stuff that we're going to do with the if function. But anyways, just so that you know, the if function checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another if false. So think about your data. Do you ever have a data where you may test your data and it either is going to evaluate as a true or false, and you're going to give a different answer if it's true or a different answer if it's false? One of the things that you're going to find in several of the examples that I'm going to be using today is we're going to need to know about the F4 function key, or we're going to at least need to know about ranging names. So range names is a way of naming a cell location, whether it's many cells or one cell, and we can use that in a formula. So F4 and range names kind of do the same thing in a sense that they make a cell or the range of cells an absolute value in formulas. And it's going to be very important that we do that. So if you haven't really used that a lot or don't quite understand that F4 thing with the currency symbols and all that weird stuff, we're going to let you know how that all works today. We're also going to get into a nested if. There could be a situation where, yes, we run a test, and yes, we have a true answer, but there may be another option where we need to run another test because there could be a possibility of a second true answer, and then of course we'll have a false answer after that. So we'll actually have two if statements or if functions in one statement. One of the other things that we can do is we can use what we call the AND function. And the AND function just checks whether all arguments are true. So that means that if you say it's greater than this and it's less than this, it has to equal both of those. And if it doesn't, then it returns a false, the word false. If it does, then it will return the true. A lot of times, we don't necessarily want the word true or false as the answer, but we need a function that can really look to see if in fact it is true or false. If you don't want just the true or false as the result, then that's when you can come in here and you can use an if function along with the AND function to get exactly the true and false answer that you would like to see. So we're going to build it. We're going to show you the true, the false. And you know, a couple of cool things with the true and false is you can throw the filters on, find all your false, find all your trues, copy, paste just visible cells, and you instantly have that range of cells that we're looking for or records that we're looking for. The OR function works a little bit differently, kind of along the same lines, but it's going to check whether any argument is true. And if any argument out of all the arguments that you've decided on are true, then it will return the word true. If not, then of course it will return the word false. Now, one that I wanted to add, and I didn't see it in the description, but I certainly want to add it because I use it all the time, is the if error function. For those of you that have been building functions for many years, way back in the 2003 version and earlier, you might have had to use things such as is error along with an if, and my God, the function was as long as your arm when you were done. So we don't want to do that. They've really streamlined this, and basically what this does is you probably have had functions that have ended up with an error, divide by zero, an NA, numbers, those type of things. And you don't want that as your answer. You want something different. Well, that's what you can do here. You can decide on if it errors out, what would you like displayed rather than the Microsoft default error. And that's what we'll do with the if error. All right, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to open up that spreadsheet and I'll show you what we're going to do. And we'll do some little tips and tricks along the way here to help you out as well. I want to start out with this file that we're looking at right here, and I want to give you an idea what we're looking at doing here. we are looking at taking these salespeople's totals and we want to test against this sales goal. So in other words, they have to meet this. And then we need a function that can give us the true and give us the false. Now you may notice I have an F4 and I have the name range here because one of the things that we're going to find is, and if you're familiar with building